I'd invite Will to lead us with cover care to open the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a special welcome to everyone here today for Regional Council month of July. And I ask you all to join in with our prayer to begin. Whakataka te hau ki tūru, whakataka te hau ki tonga, te mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai, e hia ki ana ki atakura, e teo, e huka, e hauhu, ki te maurura.
Okay, thank you. Now, Secretary, is there any apologies for today's meeting?
My apologies, Chair. I just need to leave at 3 o'clock today.
Leave at 3 o'clock? Excuse me, we'll run the meeting. Or any other apologies? Got an apology to leave at 3 o'clock?
Just about.
Any other apologies?
Exactly.
No other apologies? I'll, someone move the apologies be accepted. Anyway, Craig, all those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Notices. Only notice I've got is that in the event of earthquake, drop, cover and hold. If the shaking is long and strong, leave the building through the nearest exit, out the door. Evacuation and emergency alarms sound, evacuate the building through the nearest exit, and go to the affected area, which is the grass on the corner of Dalton and Bordia Street. The council is deemed to be a public place, so spacing is to be at 1 metre. In the event that it's a very, very strong earthquake, then head for Bluff Hill, going along Dalton Street to the park. Okay. Next item on the agenda is conflicts of interest declarations. Anybody got a conflict of interest they'd like to declare? Being none, we'll move on. Confirmation of the minutes of the Regional Council held on the 29th of June. These have been circulated. I understand there's no suggested amendments, is there? All right. Someone care to move the minutes be received? Sustained. Thank you, Anyway. Second of Gerard. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. Because there is no such thing in the standing orders, there will be no matters arising.
Great disappointment.
And move to the follow-ups from the previous meeting.
Thank you, Chair. There are just 2 items in there, the first of which has been latterly addressed by Mr Maxwell this morning with the provision of the map that has been tabled, which responds to the request regarding locations of Tūriraku 1 billion trees funding projects. Just a reminder that this is a subset of the work that we do around erosion control and afforestation, so it's not the totality of all of the planting activities undertaken in a given year. It is specific to the funding for 1 billion trees, of which there was a discrete body of work.
Yes, Michelle, you have a question?
Kia ora, koutou. Through Mr Chair, so for one, I did contact operations about the comment because I requested, I made the request to find out where all the 1BT plantings are, and just like to know who actually responded in the table there, various locations across the region, turning into detail.
So I can't give you an answer to that question. That's just something we're looking into presently, but it wasn't directly from the group manager himself.
Yeah, and has explained it because it sounds dismissive to, and as it's not me, I represent the tangata whenua from the northern catchments, and so I'm getting a reply that's dismissive. So now we've been given the mapping of where the trees are, because as I understand, when I did some work with Matariki Tūrako, when you get government funded trees, you have to say where they've been planted. I had to find out who owned the land, I had to get their permission, things like that. So I thought there should be something in place that actually shows where the trees have been planted. And from what I see, there's none in Wairoa. None in the Wairoa district, which has the highly erodible lands, the highest sedimentation. Yeah, disappointing, really. And your head scientist, Anna Smith, said in the EICC hui the other day that in reply to Councillor Williams' question, what's the main stressor of the water? Sedimentation. Where's the main sedimentation issues? Wairoa. Where's the trees? Oh, nothing.
Chair, just to reiterate, this is a subset of the work that we do around erosion control, and there are extensive activities in the northern catchments in the Wairoa district in relation to erosion control and afforestation. The request arose from commentary around the 1BT contract that was in a previous significant activities report. I don't know whether anyone make any further comment on Wairoa activity?
Well, could I suggest, rather than have an off-the-cuff presentation about this, that as that a particular briefing, a specific briefing, be given to Michelle to explain exactly what's going on in Wairoa. To ask the question might have a degree of detail that the rest of the councillors don't need to know, but could we do that?
It's got on here, it's like headers. Answer that question.
It's not working, mate. Thank you. Mike's not working. So, Chair, just in relation to the second follow-up item, it will be timely at the start of the next triennium to consider remuneration for council committees outside of remuneration set by the Remuneration Authority determinations that relate obviously to our elected members. And so there is an action in there for the Te Pou Whakarai and myself, following guidance from the Regional Planning Committee's meeting on the 14th of September to initiate a review, and we'll present the findings of that review into the remuneration of our tangata whenua reps to the incoming council for consideration.
Okay, up here.
Sorry, James, I just missed those dates you gave at the end of that statement. I'm just looking for a time frame to enable good participation and a timely return from our members with regards to the feedback. So could you give us that timeline again, please?
Do you want to comment?
I thought it was said after the next training, so I guess.
Yeah, before that, you said it was
The process
going
will
out.
commence before, but we will present the findings to the incoming council. I don't know, Peter, do you want to elaborate?
So we got months. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, we're just working in conjunction with our governance group because there are specific references within the terms of reference of RPC that covers that part. So we're working with that with the governance group. It'll be a post-election paper that comes forward for that. I'll work directly with the chairs and the co-chairs in terms of the progression of that.
Okay, and just with regards to an indicator on that first touch point with your tangata whenua members, when are you looking to provide the first piece of document for them to consider?
A date isn't actually set for that at the moment. I'll be in touch with you directly, chairs and co-chairs around that.
Okay, so what I'm after, Mr. Chair, is that in the past it has been a pretty tight turnaround required on the TWR members, and I'm trying to avoid that. And what I'm not getting is specific indicators around how is the process reflecting previous experiences. So I don't want to repeat of the past. What I want to do is move forward. So can I get some indicator that that is part of the thinking of our team with regards to this process, that we're aware of those turnaround times and the capacity issues for our TWR members and how long it takes for us to participate in that process in order for us to meet the deadline after the post-election?
Well, could I just request that Pevi and James, who are leading this, send a note to people what they expect, the expectation is of the timeline going forward.
That's a start.
I haven't got the
Concerns are
specific dates.
noted, though. Sorry, Chair, the concerns are noted.
Concerns are noted, and following on that, we'll send you a note saying what they think are the time frame for this going forward.
Lovely, thank you.
Once you have that, then you'll be able to comment on it and say whether it's satisfactory or not.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Would someone like to move that the significant organisational, move that the previous follow-ups from the previous regional council be noted? Well,
No, I can't vote.
Craig, all those in favour say aye. Aye. No, carried. Significant organisational activities, looking forward through August 2022.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go through these in detail. We're happy to take any questions in relation to both the activities and the strategic projects register. Perhaps just to note 2 points, the first of which is there continues to be some minor impacts on delivery of various projects relating to the COVID and general community health situation we're in. but by and large, across the board, council's operational and capital works programs in these groups is continuing. And just the other thing I'd draw to, two things to draw to council's attention. One is the successful intervention that we've had in relation to the marine biosecurity risks in the inner harbour, and the fact that we did have undertaken for us a comprehensive surveillance exercise. The plant pests, marine plant pests in question were identified and have been controlled. So that's a good outcome from that surveillance. And just the other thing to note is the successful funding of $400,000 from the Tourism Infrastructure Fund to complement funding from ourselves and other partners in establishing a toilet facility block and reticulated water and power to the Aotearangi campus site at the Waitangi Regional Park, which will certainly set that location up well for future events, particularly Matariki.
Thank you. I'll take questions and comments from councillors. I'll move from my left to my right, starting with Councillor Foss.
Oh, thanks. Two, Chair, please. Just a quick one on both the traffic light and the explanation, 14 and 15. Just on the enterprise asset management, which is 14, just that working in with the new fuse project, etc. Because I know we're still with the red traffic light. And the other document there, that does look like it's more of an implementation. There's no further danger or anything like that for flooding, given recent events. And then my second question is on 15, regarding urban catchment. Has there been any further discussions or progress with Hastings District Council, particularly regarding stormwater management or changes or the discussions that you're having with them?
So happy to answer I'll start with the first question around the enterprise asset management project. So that red reflects resourcing. That doesn't impact our delivery on the ground.
Yep.
That's effectively a new asset management system and processes and IT platform. So although that is delayed, we continue with our existing processes. On the second one, I'd need to get a little bit more information and happy to send you an email in terms of our most recent exchanges with Hastings District Council.
Sorry, just to expand, I think there was an ongoing renegotiation of responsibilities. Is that just still progressing through?
Yeah, so that's the MOU with on the Havelock streams.
Yep.
So our strategy with that was to address the Napier MOU first, which has been a bit more in-depth than we initially envisaged. And once we complete that, we then want to move on to reviewing the MOU with Hastings. So that work is yet to start, but it's definitely scheduled.
Okay, very interested in that work. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Curtin. Anyway, Michelle. Questions?
For the significant activities.
Yep.
So on number 4 on Northern Catchments, regarding the wireless leasehold network, it seems to be a ongoing problem. And with regard to possum hotspots, so is there monitoring? Because while that's not working, I suppose the possum numbers are exploding. And the other one was about about the weir at Whakakī. I heard that there was an issue with that. It was broken or something when I was out there planting the other day.
Chair, through you, so in relation to the wireless leasehold traps at Mahia, we decommissioned the network during COVID because of staff inability to operate in the field. So we've been systematically reinstating the network, and there's been primarily communication problems between devices in the network that have slowed things down. We're confident that we're on top of possum hotspots because of the use of the surveillance dogs. The surveillance dogs have found reasonably large numbers in some areas that have been followed up with further trapping work, and so we've got on top of those. The dogs have actually proved to be incredibly valuable in figuring out where we've missed them across the trapping and baiting network. So we're confident that we're going to meet our predator-free 2050 limited contractual milestones in August, September this year and conclude the project by the year end. So we should be at the point we can transition the project across to the community. That's the ambition. Yes, and look, in relation to the Weir, Chris might want to add some comment as well, but we've had some issues there associated with the installation of the Weir and then subsequent opening of the Rahui channel that were caught and acted upon very quickly. So both my staff and Chris's staff have been pretty tightly connected to the remediation work to address the issues associated with it. So I'm very satisfied with the actions of both our people and Chris's team in terms of identifying the issue and getting on top of it quickly. Naturally, it's caused some anxiety and concern amongst the community, but we've been very active and engaging and communicating with them about what's happened, why, and what's being done about it. But Chris might want to add to that.
Thank you. I think it's
Yeah, I think that's a good high-level summary. I can really only provide detail. It's probably not warranted at this table.
Apiata. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The first question is probably, I'd like either a response or a reference as to where I can find more information. Doesn't necessarily have to be answered here, but number 6 under the Northern Catchments, the Peace Plant team has started iwi consultation for the possible release of biological agents related to Old Man's Beard. I remember there being a pilot project operating in Wairau associated with the Japanese tiger moth and the Old Man's Beard. Is this the same program? Is this an extension of that program? Where can I get some reference material about understanding that transition?
Look, I don't have that detail in front of me, but I'll make sure that we provide that to you.
I think
I'll send it to you.
Could you circulate it to councillors, because it's also on my list of things to do.
Will do.
Thank you.
Number 7, thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 7 in the same box with regards to biodiversity, and this is associated with your comments around the dive in the harbour and assessments there. Is there any cost recovery in that, and what's associated with some of the other partners in that area?
Yes, so we're in a partnership with Napier City on this and looking to share costs. We'll look to recover costs where possible. The other point to make about this is that control work was done in July, and the team are confident that they've destroyed the unwanted organisms, so it's been a good outcome all around.
Cool. And my last one on this item, Mr. Chair, is with regards to number 1, Right Tree, Right Place program on page 11. It talks there about the development of a standardised farm plan is underway to assist streamlined farm planning activity. Is this transferable into iwi and community groups, or is this targeted to our farm and land users? So how adaptable is this for us to be able to use in other areas of our community?
Through you, Chair, it's a farm forestry plan. It's agnostic as to land tenure, so it really it talks to the property and the solutions rather than necessarily being concerned with who owns the land. So I think it's entirely transferable.
Thank you.
Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Chair. Just point 27, gravel extraction completed at the Tukapau and Makaratu streams finished. So well done to all those involved achieving progress on that project. It's good to see action happening, and I've spoken before about the results with the last flood or storm event. I was just wondering, as a follow-up to that completion, any kind of monitoring work done on the roading network where they've gone from, quiet rural roads to suddenly getting these massive amounts of truck movements on them during these periods? Is there any monitoring done just to check that, what impact we're having there?
Yes, so there is some work done around that. So at several locations, we've worked with Central Hawke's Bay District Council to look at any remedial actions to those roads, and we've co-funded some work to particular roads. It's also something we ask contractors to be communicating to the surrounding areas, particularly where there's houses close to roads, of the fact that this work is undertaking. So we are looking at it reasonably closely. There's probably always room for improvement. At the end of the day, to get the material out, truck movements will increase for relatively short periods of time. So we're just asking for the community's support to enable us to do this essential service to maintain the flood control scheme.
You,
Yeah,
Councillor Van Beek.
this is on page 13 on the traffic light, and point 10, erosion control scheme program. Both schedule is read and budget is read, and that's obvious. We haven't been able to get as many poles out, although it's comparable to last year. So what does this mean? Does this mean that actually we'll have an excess of poles at the end of the season? So we've planted less than we had planned. So more or less a lost opportunity. And what will happen to those poles that actually are not being planted? Are they still harvested and replanted, an extension of our nursery, or how will this work?
Through you, Chair, the paper's probably not clear. We've actually sold every pole we've produced. So the issue being we didn't produce as many of the 3 metre A grade poles as we had planned. So the nursery performance wasn't quite what we wanted. But we've sold and distributed everything that has been harvested, which has been a great outcome. Obviously, we want more, and we are continuing, and demand is there for more. We're continuing with our nursery expansion program at haste to meet that demand.
Great, thank you.
You, Charles, any questions?
Just one bit of advice on the first one, or two points really. Can you just explain a bit more about how to get a hold of the Wairua event mapping? It says here about high-resolution satellite imagery available on the public council-based viewer. But
Chair, through you, I think, are you talking about the satellite imagery? Yep. So, yeah, that's available publicly, and I can share a link to you, and apologies, I thought I had already done that.
Circulate the link would be good.
Yep, we're not advertising it, though, because I just ask that you don't distribute it too widely because our infrastructure is not set up for large use of the site at the moment. So we've really just targeted it to those who need it until we've got the infrastructure set up properly.
it does say it's available for public use.
Which it is. It's just we're not promoting and publicising it.
Okay, and the next one is really about on the traffic lights under item 7, please. Kotahi plan change. I see the Mohawk plan change has got a red traffic light, which is like ongoing. Is this acceptable, or we're going to do something? Yeah.
Through you, Chair, similarly to this council and the COVID situation that we've had with inability to bring the public into consultation meetings, the team in Wairoa are slightly behind on schedule. We did meet with them in the last 2 weeks to discuss that progress, and we think that we will be able to get that back on track alongside Kotahi.
I understand the Mohawk plan change exactly about the Mohawk catchment, East Valley, and Waihua. So, is that like across the whole project, or schedule is behind across the whole project, or?
It's across the whole project. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Barton?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just following up on Councillor Lambert's question, item 11. What are we planning to do with the data that we've collected from the high-resolution satellite imagery ourselves as an organisation relative to, I guess, understanding future risks and mitigation?
Through you, Chair. So the data's being post-processed as we talk now. The obvious things that we're looking at are things like understanding area pasture production that's been lost pre and post event, trying to quantify material lost, so migration patterns. There's a lot of technical detail that will then be also picked out of the post-processing and used to further calibrate our SEDNet modelling. So there's quite a suite of things. What we did is deliberately acquire the most high-resolution, complex data set we could, knowing that we would have potential applications we hadn't thought about as yet. So we're sort of fully exploring what we can use the data for at the moment, but there's some obvious ones that we're working on today.
Thank you. A couple of others. Can you just, item 37, might be Ian again, actually, just paint us a little picture of what the tank dashboard and its creation, what's the utility and purpose of that dashboard? What's that going to help us do once we get this tank plan change in our hot little hands?
Yeah, good question. And perhaps I should bring in a show and tell on both the Tuki Tuki and the Garahiretonga tank dashboard for you to see. It's effectively it's a dashboard for the community to see what's happening to water quality parameters across the various catchments at any point in time. So you'll recall, particularly in the Tuki Tuki policy, there's a requirement for us to advise landowners of water quality, current water quality, the picture. So we've created an online dashboard so that individuals, catchment groups, etc., can get as real-time information as we can provide them to see the current state of the environment.
Right, that's a good point, Ian. Could you put that a note for yourself to talk to the chair of the EICC for that to be an agenda item for a subsequent EICC meeting?
Will do.
And then
next question.
One last question. Right tree, right place, item 1 dashboard, of the traffic lights. Great to see a couple of greens and only a yellow with everything that's been going on. But tell me about this steering group. There is a recalibrated project signed off from the June steering group. Can you just talk to me who's involved in that steering group?
So the steering group involves like the likes of Lockie McGillivray, James Powery, so Farming Forestry Advisors, Michael Bassett-Foss, MPI staff representing the Nature Conservancy. So it's and Jen Cowan from our communications team. So it's a mixture of technical, farm, forestry, financial, communications advice that are helping the sort of week by week, month by month program planning for the project.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Jack.
Nothing from me, thank you, Chair.
Mike?
Mine was once again in the tank plan change. It's just, I understand the hearings are still in suspension. Any idea of when our hearing panel is going to come back with the report? I think we all just wanted, we all just want to publicise. I don't think we really care about what the outcome is anymore.
Through you, Chair, we sought an extension on behalf of our panel until the 31st of August, and that's when we expect our decision.
Thank you. Okay, I've got just one question. Number 2, tidying up Pinus Contorta contract work before the new season begins. Could someone tell us where we're up to about the war against Pinus Contorta? We're probably one of the few people who've been to the top of the mountains and seen these people working on a lonely, desolate place, chopping down Pinus Contorta. Pinus Contorta.
It's a bit contorted.
Yeah, it is contorted, yes, I'm tongue-tied. Thank you for your help there, Councillor Curtin. But it seems to be an almost impossible job. So are we making headway here, or are we slowly going backwards?
It's a good question, Chair. We were making significant inroads with the additional Jobs for Nature funding the government released during lockdown. Unfortunately, that's significantly diminished. So we had quite a boost, and we managed to do quite a large collaborative project across the border central North Island with us, Horizons, Waikato and Bay of Plenty regional councils. Yep. But the funding's been dropped back to about a third of its original, of that boosted amount. And so we're now in a position where we're having to think about areas that we'll have to probably let go and which areas we prioritise for trying to hold the line. So we are lobbying as a sector to both MPI and Department of Conservation that the futility of the additional investment and the gains made and then the subsequent loss of that, the analogy being it's a bit like putting your money in the car park and burning it if you walk away from your investment to get to where you've got to. So they may be listening, but I don't have a lot of hope that we're going to be able to maintain the gains that we've achieved in the last sort of 24 months, unfortunately.
Well, when you get that answer, let me know, because I've got a personal interest in this. Okay,
Mr. Chair, could I have one more, please?
one more, supper, yes, sure.
Yes, please. Probably for you, Ian, is that, and that's the, I know, we know Wairoa has a fund for the weather events of March and April, but there's still a few people out there who are confused about where to go. So for the benefit of those listening, you advise them where to go. So take it as a recovery manager in Wairoa.
Yeah, good question, councillor. And so we're working through the recovery manager in the Wairoa District Council. So we're a supporting role. So Wairoa District are leading the recovery program. So Courtney Hayward is the recovery manager with the council. I don't have her contact details with me, but I'm sure if people phone the District Council main office, they'll get put through to her.
All right, would someone move that the report be received? Sheriff Jacqueline, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Got to know, carried. Call for minor items not on the agenda. Minor items. I have two. Wharf 6, climate change. Any others?
6, yeah.
Go.
Weeds in the Clive.
Weeds, Clive. Leave A, all right. Okay, let's move on to the next item, draft regional public transport plan, adoption for consultation. So would you like to come to the front here, please, and present yourself and lead us through this?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just start by noting that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council is required to have a regional public transport plan that incorporates the reviewed public transport network and the public transport operating model. Hawke's Bay Regional Council have engaged Emma Cagney to assist us in the network review and the drafting of our draft regional public transport plan. And we have done quite a lot of public engagement in terms of, or engagement with the Regional Transport Committee and in reviewing our network, we are well aware of our current bus service being inconvenient, not useful for most people. Most of our routes run only every 30 minutes to 1 hour, meaning long wait times. Service finishes quite early, doesn't serve people that work late or early. We have one-way loops that require long detours to get back from where you started. And in essence, Hawke's Bay has among the smallest public transport fleet for its population in New Zealand. So we knew some of those problems before we set out, and we've learned a bit more as well. We have 0.5% of our people in our region travelling on a bus to get to work, compared with over 80% by car. So based on that, how do we make it better? Our draft regional public transport plan proposes a step change for public transport that moves away from a coverage approach that is trying to put a bus down every residential street towards a high-frequency patronage model that proposes a service that's faster, more frequent, more reliable. And while there is going to be small increases in walking to bus stops, the services that will run will be more frequent and so will mitigate the time that you have to walk by speeding up the time in which you can get to your destination. We're proposing bus routes that run the same way in both directions. We are proposing more connections between routes, giving more freedom to travel around, increasing frequency, extending the coverage of bus services, introducing a new peak express from 2025 from Central Hawke's Bay into Hastings, and identifying existing initiatives in Wairoa that the Regional Council might support for community transport services. We have ambitions that are bold, that by 2030 our service will be 7 days more frequent, an evening service that can be relied upon, giving more opportunities for those working between 9 and 5. We are required to go out to consultation with this plan and seek input from the community on that, and that is what is before you today.
Thank you, Katrina. Now, before I go to questions, I just thought the Chair of the Transport Committee, Martin Williams, would like to make a few comments, and then we'll take some questions.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yes, look, this is a pretty exciting day for me and I think for everyone on the Regional Transport Committee. Firstly, just like to commend the Council staff and Emma Cagney for the manner in which they've gone about bringing this public transport plan or the draft into its current state. There's been quite an intensive and extensive process of interrogating our communities, where they live, how they get around, where they go to, their socio-economic profile, and only through that do we really understand the different communities that we need to serve, from Wairoa down to Central Hawke's Bay and Napier Hastings and in between, and how we might better provide a public transport service to them. This is one of those areas where the Regional Council can make a real impact on people's lives. There is the climate change imperative and the reduction of the vehicle kilometres travelled that's in the emissions reduction plan, but that's all very nice and important, but I think really it's about better transport options for people who are struggling to pay the costs of petrol, car repairs, insurance. And you know what, if we get this right, we may back families off from buying a second or a third car, and to me that really is what success looks like. So the biggest intervention here, as Katrina said, is improving frequency. We may be a low density region, but other regions like Otago are as well. And the biggest thing we can do, and you all know this from your own experiences, I'm sure, is an understanding within the public that if they miss one bus, there's another one just around the corner. It means if you're rushing off to work in the morning and you've got a load of washing you want to hang out, or a dishwasher you want to clear, it doesn't matter that you miss one bus, there'll be another one quarter of an hour. And that really can drive the step change, the mode shift that we're wanting to see. I'm very excited to see the Central Hawke's Bay connection in place firmly from 2025, with a trial prior to that, two services in the morning, 2 in the evening. And I'm also very passionate about the Wairoa support for community trust, and you can hold me to account that I will get up there and see if we can get some financial support going for some early adopters of providing a service up there, and what is one of the lowest car ownership parts of the region, but with no public transport at the moment. The last thing I just wanted to say was I'm also a big believer in on-demand. It can inspire public imagination that public transport's, for me, something that's usable, reliable, efficient, and I look forward to it being part of a mix, but perhaps a transition, a baton pass to a service. If we get this right, people will be on board with the fixed transport services, and they will be more cost efficient in the long term. So we can come back to the issue of costs later. Thank you, Chair. That's probably
Thank you.
quite a bit of
We'll take some questions, then we'll have some comments, and then we'll go to the resolution. Right, any questions? Questions?
Thanks, Chair. Just a clarification, if anything, like Councillor Williams, pretty excited by the proposed CHB route. Just the way it reads there, Monday to Friday, to Hastings in the morning and back to Central Hawke's Bay in the afternoon. So is that how it reads? So it's just transporting passengers from Central Hawke's Bay to Hastings in the morning and vice versa. And the only reason I ask that is because I obviously drive that route a lot. Coming to council each week, and there seems to be as much traffic heading south as there is north each morning, and vice versa on the way back.
So through you, Chair, that is the proposal at the moment, and we'd love to hear from the community on that.
You're silly to take a bus down empty, we didn't have it full, I would have thought. Up the other.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, my question hopefully is going real easy for you, Katrina, and that is I have missed some of the development of this consultation document as it's been built. I did appreciate the workshop this morning. What it highlighted for me is I'd love to understand more, particularly around Whitehall, the demographics and data which they use to formulate their assumptions for Whitehall before I start feeding into this. And also I'll pick up, so if I could get you to forward me the relevant data that associates to Wara with regards to how they've interrogated that space for this proposal. And I'll take the opportunity, Mr. Chair, to acknowledge the extended invitation from Chair of Regional Transport, Councillor Williams. We will look to create an opportunity for whoever the chair is of the Regional Transport Committee in the next term to come and visit us and talk about innovative and catered solutions for Wara. Ngā mihi.
Great invitation. Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Chair. Katrina, I just wonder where you can help me. I'm looking at paragraph 6 in the paper. The draft plan is proposing a step change for public transport. Can you help me define what a step change would look like? And I'm sort of looking around at the various numbers that have been in the paper in terms of is it the number of commuters that are taking public transport? Is it a decrease in private vehicle use? What would step change look like?
Absolutely. So we have, we are proposing, obviously, to go from what is currently a coverage model to a patronage model. So we're aiming for a step change in patronage numbers. While we haven't attributed a target of what that patronage would be, the step change is about frequency, so about having reliable, frequent service to that every 20 minutes or 15, 30, 20, as you can see in the 2025 core services. So that would be the first step, improvement in level of service, and then by 2030, another step change in terms of more frequency and increased patronage. We have in the past had patronage numbers that a couple of plans back, I think, but they were never really reached. And we are proposing in the plan, it talks about aiming for our 2019 patronage figures that were I think our peak here in Hawke's Bay.
So
27. Sorry, I've got that.
I appreciate that in terms of the change in service. But do we have a number or a target? You've mentioned the 2019 patronage level. And I'm seeing that the number of commuters, and I'm not quite sure what the numbers mean, numbers of commuters, 234 cars, 44196. I'm not quite sure what.
Sorry, where are you reading that,
I'm actually reading from the accompanying workshop paper, trips by private vehicle versus public transport.
Right.
If I could, I just interpret what I understand Councillor Curtin to be saying is, when you talk about step change, what do you define as step change? How would we know we've achieved a step change? That's what I guess he's asking.
Yes, it is.
Yes, that's.
So what are the metrics for a step change?
So we haven't put in patronage metrics. What we have said is that we would aim for in 2025 to achieve the patronage levels that we had in Hawke's Bay's peak, and I don't think it's 2019. I can't pull that figure
Okay, but that's
right
a
this
figure.
minute.
We can find that. Yep.
So my point is this, is currently we have these large buses that I see running around with very few people in them for a good percentage of the time. Is it a matter of having more large buses running around, but on more frequently without any people on them? That's my point. So I'm looking for.
We are looking for an increase in patronage.
Sure.
And an increase in fare box revenue, and that is articulated in the RPTP.
Okay, that's fine. I just wondered whether there's a way we can sort of distill that to a target or a goal that is understandable in our discussion, consultation.
Right, I can make that clearer.
I think we've got that. You've said to our peak patronage, that's the goal. So, Councillor Ormsby.
Thank you, Chair. Just to thank Katrina and the team for bringing us such a robust review to inform this proposed plan. My question relates to point 19 and, and I support the vision that's there that I'm sure Councillor Williams worked with the Transport Committee on. But it talks about a reason, I suppose, why and a case for change, and it, in the last part of that sentence, looks at the sustainable carbon neutral Hawke's Bay. So when we look at that part of the vision, are we talking by 2050, 2025, or 2032, which is at the end of this plan? So can we quantify when this vision is aiming to end in terms of carbon neutrality as well?
In terms of carbon neutral, there is central government policy requirements to have the public transport fleet electric by 2025. That's my understanding. Sorry, I'm short on that detail at the moment. And so as we prepare to go out to contract in 2025 for our next public transport contract, we will be including that in our contract as a requirement. So, no, I can't answer you in terms of when we would be carbon neutral, but there isn't a requirement to include that going forward in our new contract.
Okay.
Councillor Foss.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Katrina. Just on page 6 of document that's going out, you mentioned some financials in there, the document mentions some financials. And for the 25 proposed changes, you point out there's an additional cost of 4.6 million a year, much of which is already budgeted for. And then the 2030, potentially an additional cost of around 3.5 million per year, which I assume is new money, but you go on to say, but with an expectation of additional funding from other sources. Can you just talk us through the kind of the best and worst case scenario of the 2030 scenario, if you get there, which is potentially just new money potentially on both sides?
So the draft regional public transport plan has an expectation of cost of $12 million in 2030. Currently in the regional council's long-term plan, we have budgeted a total operating funding cost of 10 million. I'm rounding those figures.
Sure.
Of that 10 million, we have incorporated the subsidies and grants of the Waka Kotahi subsidy and grant of the 50%. So the impact on ratepayers is in 2030 is approximately $4 million. With this additional funding of 2 million, potentially, worst case scenario, that could go to 6 million. That's not including the Waka Kotahi subsidy of 50%. So if we included that, the targeted rate would then be 5 million. There would be an extra $1 million required by targeted rates in year 10, so by 2030. That also isn't factoring in any increases in fare box revenue to reduce that impact. But worst case scenario, and albeit with Waka Kotahi subsidy of 50%, there would be an impact of $1 million in 2030.
Right. The best case scenario is the 1 mil, did you say?
Sorry, yes.
The best case scenario. So at the end of the day, it's potentially a 1 mil change in 8 years' time, or worst case scenario, and government policy may change along the way through as well.
Yeah, worst case is an extra 2 million in 2030.
Thank you.
Okay, right, would someone care to move the, you've got a question, Michelle?
Just looking at with the community transport in Wairau and Api, welcome you coming through, Martin, to talk to our community. What I'm aware of is that we have a community bus, I'm not quite sure who supports that, and that sort of helps service the kaumātua in our area. Te Whatuora, formerly DHB, they have an outpatient service, which you had in the books there, to transport our people to Hastings for their appointments, and also if we need that are discharged to get back to Wairoa. But I know that's not sufficient. It isn't enough for our community. Some of our hauora Māori, they are even transporting people through to their appointments. So we're coping, as you said, we've got the lowest car ownership, no public transport, and the highest deprivation statistics in New Zealand. The driver's licences processing is conducted out of town. So it could be a lot of our drivers aren't even fully licensed. So we're severely disadvantaged. And I see the kōrero of increased frequency, extended service, but at the moment there's nothing coming from Hawke's Bay Regional Council for my community. So back in Wairoa. And so, yeah, I'd welcome that visit. We both would.
So through you, Chair, I'm just going to speak to that just quickly. We have had many submissions made to the Regional Land Transport Plan, the current plan by the Wairoa community, and we're well aware of the community transport that is operating, and we think there's potential to grow that, support it, and they, because they understand their community best. I would note that driver licensing receives a significant amount of funding from the road safety portfolio out of the transport funding, and so and we have grown that in the last year in Wairoa. We're looking to try and continue that, subject to Waka Kotahi funding. So we have had lots of representations to the Regional Land Transport Committee from the Wairoa community, and this is what got us initially to the position of thinking that community transport was at least a starter in that community.
Well, you can only go by from zero away. So, yeah, cool.
Martin, you want to move?
Yeah, with some amendments, yeah.
Second for the paper.
Yep. I need to make some amendments to the proposed recommendations in light of the outcomes of the workshop, but I can...
Okay, well, Martin, we've got.
Okay, might want to bring them up. I don't know if that's possible.
You sent them to
Page 53. Oh, sorry.
No, I'll just share them now.
Send them to Leanne so you can put them up on the wall.
Well, I don't have the means to do that. I can probably speak to them faster.
Sorry?
I don't think they're that material.
I'll just speak to them if I could just say it. So basically it is that it's as per 1 to 4, but we adopt in item 3, after the words for public consultation. The first one is that, so after public consultation, we would say, subject to the following: 1, that the Chief Executive be delegated authority to make minor wording changes as appropriate prior to notifying the plan without changing the substance of that plan. There are some, maybe whoever's typing wants to get that down.
If you say authority to make minor wording changes is sufficient,
yes,
that means you can't make substantive.
Yes, that's fine.
Minor wording changes is fine.
Yes, I am a lawyer, as you know, so I tend to like precision around these matters, Chair. I will adapt to my context. I would also move that the plan be amended to include an additional policy regarding on-demand. Put the pen down, if I could just speak to that. What I have in mind is that the policy would say something like that we continue to trial on demand in Hastings and Napier to drive mode shift and public uptake of public transport as an efficient, affordable and reliable service. That doesn't need to be in the motion, that's on the record. But the second amendment that I'm making, in addition to the Chief Executive being delegated the power to make minor changes, is that we include an additional policy regarding the place of on-demand within the plan.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear.
Chair, can I suggest to expedite this matter that it be amended so that the Chief Executive be delegated in consultation with the Chair of the Regional Transport Committee, and then Martin and I can take it offline.
To make minor amendments and
address on demand.
And address on demand. Yep.
Right.
Okay, you happy with your amendment? As the
To
mover?
include or address? Yeah, hold on. Just a point of inquiry, yeah. Well, there's one over there. Yeah, to include or address?
Well,
I've heard both.
Well, if you address, you are including it, so what mean the same thing. So you have to, the paper will have to speak to the policy of on-demand.
Yes.
So you can either include it, but therefore you are addressing it.
Okay.
So
I'm trying to avoid writing the essay in the
as long as you're aware that when the paper comes out, there will be some minor amendments which should make no changes to the substance, and in the paperwork should be a description of what the current policy is on demand and how it butts into with us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which should be done for the sake of clarity.
So,
yes.
Chair, thank you.
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Neil is the second. Do you have an amendment?
My second.
I don't know who
Somebody was, I'm quite happy to put my hand up for it.
I got Neil as the second. Do you wishing to speak?
That's all right. Yes, I do. Yes, Chair.
But I want to take Martin first as the mover.
Yeah, I thought you just did, but okay.
No, he's just, Martin, why you go?
No.
Thank you. I was asked to comment on the introduction of the paper. There are a couple more things I want to say. I really just want to encourage the public to get on board and tell us about what you like about the transport plan, and equally, if not more important, what you don't like. It is by no means purporting to be perfect. It does affect some communities in different ways to others, and we need to hear about that. I would equally encourage that the consultation document be quite clear as to the possible worst-case scenario for funding. For example, that by 2030 there is a worst-case scenario of an additional $2 million above that projected in the long-term plan, but that this, in line with current settings, should be less than that. And I just wanted to say a couple of other things about the need really for our local authorities to get on board and support this through their CBD parking policies. Public transport is never going to work and to get the fare box returns that we want and to drive the step change if you can have freely available CBD parking throughout Hastings and Napier. We need to pull every lever if we're going to make the reduction in vehicle kilometres travelled envisaged by the government's emissions reduction plan. You'll have all read the article from Pippa in the Hawke's Bay today last week. There are truly massive interventions and changes in behaviour across everything that we do if we're going to meet a net zero carbon 2050 aspiration. So this is part of that mix. It also has great benefits for people's lives. Yeah, that's really what I wanted to say, I think, in proposing the motion, including for the reasons I shared earlier.
Thank you. Neil.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make a couple of comments. The first is a minor technical one, and that's to do with the consultation document itself. When I look at this, bus services are changing in Hawke's Bay. I'm not sure whether it's just simply changing the timetable for the bus routes. So if it could be clearer that it is a consultation document, that would be helpful. But turning to the much more substantive and important transport policy, totally concur with the Chair of the Transport Committee, Councillor Williams, that we are needing to move every possible lever we can. And my concern with where we've landed with the policy as it's going out is that I think it's not clear about what we're trying to achieve. Is it
what we're trying to achieve, increased patronage on the buses, so increase from 234 commuters, whatever that number means, doubling it, quadrupling it, whatever it is? Or is it to, in fact, reduce our carbon footprint? Is it to reduce the emissions? What is the primary purpose? And I'm aware, having been involved with transport for some time in previous lives, that councils and the regional councils specific is somewhat chained to central government policy and direction and focus around public transport. If I were to choose, I would drop this council administering public transport full stop. It is just distracting. It really does take us out of our rightful zone. What I'm interested to know, and I'm hoping some diligent submitters to the plan will come back to us with, is those other levers. Are we better to spend the money we're thinking about spending on, say, electric vehicle servicing, or some other way of encouraging alternatives? Are we better to talk to Napier City about closing the lanes down Kennedy Road and putting in a cycle lane? So it's those alternate scenarios that I think would be well worth pursuing, because my view is that this council ought to be focused on climate change, reducing emissions, reducing the number of vehicle movements, and finding the alternatives, and real quick smart. I'm not convinced that going out to public consultation with this particular document, I appreciate it, it's changed. We've had some really smart people working on it. They've done a great job. But I wonder whether we're asking the public the right sort of questions about where we go and where we want to be in 5 years' time. If it's only to achieve a quadrupling of public bus use, I don't think we've succeeded.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councillor Foss.
Thanks very much, Chair. It was actually a helpful suggestion earlier. That question about the minor amendments, changing the recommendation, can I just suggest that should be, I think it was a standing recommendation in all decision items, that minor amendments were at the behest of the CE, rather than it just occupying the time that it just has. But I'm just interested in seeing, as described, I'm just not sure what the final recommendations are. Did it include this financial bit, or was it just a commentary? I just couldn't quite remember.
I was commenting on the need for the consultation document, which isn't part of the motions, to be clear about that.
Yeah, great. I was going to raise that. It's in the paper here, 56 to 58. The finance team have cast their spell over it, but what's the wording that you're proposing in the
Proposing, without the specific words.
Yeah,
I haven't put anything in the motion to do with the finances. That was a comment on what the consultation document needs to say.
Yeah.
It's not in the public transport plan itself.
Okay. Well, I agree with Councillor Williams on that point. It is explained in our various papers, but it's just for someone to pick this up when we're inviting them, well, there's information that's probably would be helpful in their submitting process, I'm sure.
All right. Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Van Dyke.
Yeah, of course I have to speak on this, and once again, I think it's a really good plan going forward. But as Martin has said, and also Councillor Curtin, this cannot be in silo. It's very important that we actually have other triggers, and unfortunately those triggers, as Councillor Curtin has mentioned, they're actually not in our control. So the TAs will need to make a change as well, and I'm not sure whether we're able to do that, and we've had some restrictions in that field. Everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. That's how it is. Everybody thinks public transport is fantastic, but not for me, it's for the others. So I think we need to put levers in place, and we need to make sure that, as mentioned before, our parking policy needs to change, our roading network needs to change, and it needs to give preference to what I believe is public transport as being part of active transport. So I think this is a really good start. It will actually be a lot quicker, a lot faster. It will give those who use the service freedom because you can rely on it. And so I totally support it, and I hope surely that our community will support it as well and come back to us with a big tick. Thank you.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I just like to acknowledge the past comments and maybe just remind everyone of the harder conversations we need to have on bigger plan changes, and one of them being the regional spatial plan. We've got Kotahi as well, so we're playing within a sandbox here where we have to deliver a 10-year plan per the Act. So I suppose my comment is, yes, those big changes can be made, and they'll be upon us soon to have those hard conversations. Kia ora.
Will?
Thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, Councillor Curtin, we're stuck with this public transport, so here we are. But nonetheless, I like the look of the plan. When I think or talk about the current service, it's not something as a councillor I'm proud of to be associated with or responsible for. We continue to talk around this table about things like carbon emissions, climate change, caring for our environment, and then we just keep seeing these monstrous diesel buses driving around empty. So it's definitely time for a change, long overdue. So fully supportive of the consultation going out and hearing from the public and seeing what they think and what they want to change. Just on the CHB proposal, very exciting. I remember my first memories driving from rural Takapo to Hastings as a little toddler going to Fantasyland in the early 80s in the Mitzi Mirage, and we'd always allow ourselves 45 minutes, and that's all it took. That's because there was just no one else on the road. And anyway, fun times when I got to Fantasyland, but and then you look at it now, and that road's just chocker, and if it continues on its growth path, it's going to become unsustainable. And so will a public transport service work from there? I don't know, but if we get as far as giving it a shot, it's worth a shot, and seeing if we can, I guess, attempt to address the growth of traffic on that road that's happened even just in the last 3 years as a councillor, from what I've observed. So yeah, happy to support this.
Any other comments?
Get my reply?
I'll make one comment on this before I close it. As public transport is quite often underestimates the impact it has on those who are financially disadvantaged. I mean, we look at it in terms of empty buses, but I see quite a number of buses that have a number of people on them. And for many of them, the bus is the only form of transport they have. Without that, we further impoverish and further restrict people. So I think it is also got to look at public transport, not just from climate change, but it is enabling people to go about a life which they might not otherwise have. For someone who doesn't have a car, it's very difficult to get from Flaxmere to Napier. But the public bus out of Flaxmere does enable people to get to Napier to do what they need to do. It might not be convenient, it might not be all the rest of it, but it's at least a means other than walking. And I think we need to keep that in our mind. It is a social good. With that, I'll close and...
Just a brief reply. Look, I wasn't going to say anything further, but I appreciate the context in terms of the Regional Council's role in this. Can I just say this before I finish with another point, that I would back public transport provision at this scale purely from a social and an economic enabling perspective. That is part of our brief as a regional council. This matters to people's lives as much as, if not more than, touching their daily lives, how they get to work, whether they can get to work, whether an employer has got an employee, whether they can afford to go to the doctor or the dentist or to school. This is really important stuff, and I think that's actually probably the main reason most people will get involved in this. So just don't forget that, okay? But the reality is 25% of this country's emissions and this region's emissions come from transport. That's where the heavy lifting is being done under the emissions reduction plan, is the transport. That is the low-hanging fruit. To Councillor Curtin's point, the single biggest thing we can do to increase patronage on buses is increase the frequency of the routes. We can't set a KPI that a given number of people will actually get on those buses, but we know from all of the modelling, all of the science, and all of the expertise that if we increase the frequency, we will get greater patronage, we will get a better return, that worst case scenario won't happen, and we will drive this region's emissions down significantly. Thank you.
Right, all those in favour of the motion, 1 to 4 as amended, up on the wall. Leanne, what's happened to it? Leanne? Got a blank.
Yeah, that's better. Zeroed in on Leanne.
Is everybody comfortable with the motion without being able to see it?
Yeah, I read
Yep, that's all right. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Katrina. And I also would say a particular thank you to Katrina. I understand that you've had to carry this paper yourself largely in the last few wee while, and shortage of staff and other things. And I'd just like on the record that you've done a superb job. Thank you.
Thank you, but I would note that Katie has done a lion's share.
I don't mention any names, just
She's having a good holiday.
Right. Report and recommendations from the EICC. I'd now like to call on Councillor Ormsby to make some introductory comments, and then we'll go to Chris. You're going to be the officer in charge of this? EICC, is that you?
Look, if there's any, Chair, if there's any commentary required from staff, otherwise I'm sure that the Chair can.
Thank you, Chair.
I've just delivered Chris, I might call on shortly.
Yeah,
Sure, Chair.
Chair, thanks for chairing this meeting while I was stuck at home with the boys that kept the girls in the house that week. But attending on Zoom, a very heavy agenda, but very successful, I think. An acknowledgement to our manuhiri and our visitors who came for the Ahuriri Regional Park item. And we had mana Ahuriri representatives come in celebration with Napier City Council and their staff members as well. And I do hope everyone had the chance to read the terms of reference. I do believe it has set the bar high in terms of references, starting with a historical account, which I believe is very powerful. And it comes with the events over time since mana whenua settlement, and is all evidenced through the deed of settlement that mana Ahuriri went through with submissions, tribunal hearings, and that whole process of settlement. So I acknowledge that that mātauranga, that knowledge being shared within the terms of reference, as well as the makeup which looks at true partnership with our mana whenua, with the City Council, and do commend the City Council for allowing Lagoon Farm, 284 hectares, to be the site of the park, as well as being the administrator, which we will share costs with. So that decision item was a significant one, particularly for myself, working alongside Napier City Council and mana Ahuriri to get us to this stage of a joint committee. And I do hope that within the next few months we have our first meeting before the term ends, and we're able to appoint our chairs or chair, as well as look at our project management and manager going forward into the new term. In terms of our State of the Environment 3-yearly synthesis report, a huge congratulations to the team from getting it from 5 to 3 years, which we asked for. And what I do hope moving forward is that we can weave more mātauranga Māori into the next iteration of that State of the Environment report, which will be highly valuable for the organisation, for the staff, our kotahi planning, and also it allows that opportunity for mana whenua to be able to exercise whatever knowledge they can within this State of the Environment report. And also the reshaping of the Protection and Enhancement Program. So again, congratulations to Ian and the team for resetting what they know does and doesn't work for the teams and bringing that forward to us. And with that, I think, Chair, that probably covers the substantial parts of the meeting agenda. And happy to take any questions or for the staff too.
That's a very good, useful summary. So any questions that people have? Jacqueline.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a question, it's a comment.
Questions?
Comment is a good one, so it's jumping in
Take
there.
it there.
So I just wanted to make a comment on the State of Environment report. I was informed this morning that it has been entered along with 3 other entries into the Plain Language Awards. Now that might not be of much interest to many, but to me it is, and to our ratepayers it is. Plain language is presenting information to your audience that they can get first time around, and it makes good business sense. And it just makes it accessible and easy to understand. So I think that the State of the Environment report is, I'm fully supportive of it being published for our ratepayers to read and to read up about this information and the good work that the Regional Council does for our environment. And it's just really great to see, I wish them luck in the awards, and it's really great to see such a good report accessible to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Question?
Oh, kia ora. So, with regard to the State of Environment report, I tautoko your kōrero about inclusion of mātauranga Māori, most especially that Māori, or what do they call it, cultural health index or Māori monitoring, are included and on an even keel to Western science, because yet again, I think I've been involved in this place for 6 years now. I'd love to see a Māori report alongside the Western science reports, which is inclusive of the mātauranga Māori. But what I'm also aware of is that there isn't anybody, you haven't got a mātauranga Māori expert within the staff that can decipher Māori monitoring reports. So there needs to be some capacity building around that as well. So what I would look forward to, and I know coming through tomorrow, the team coming through tomorrow to Wairoa to give the report on the State of Environment, and that'll be one thing our people will be asking: where's the mātauranga Māori component? It's not just the kupu. It's our observation. It's what we're seeing when we're out there in the environment, and that isn't accounted for. I wrote cultural impact assessments, and I'm wondering who's receiving these and who's understanding them. So there needs to be an increase in that capability and capacity within the Hawke's Bay Regional Council operations, and I look forward to seeing that, hopefully in the next term. Kia ora.
Any other questions? All right. Would you like to move your report anyway? I'll second it.
Well, just one last comment to thank Councillor Williams, Councillor Curtin for their participation in the working group to get us to the stage of a joint committee. So tēnā koroa. And also Chris. Kia ora, Chris.
All right, I'll say I thought the report's great. The State of the Environment report, I hope, is very widely read. Jacqueline's it's correct to say it's easy to access, but in accessing it paints a very grim picture of our environment, without a question, shadow of a doubt. A lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm pleased to see that the council is taking it around the community to get their input into it and to bring it to their attention. I'd also like to note in 17.2 on the report that we're going to get some initiatives about dealing with the problem of deer. I congratulate Ian and the team who've got some work being done on that. The deer infestation is a problem, and I'd like to talk to them off the record what other things we can do in addition to that. So a good start. Councillor Curtin.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I just want to comment and thanks to Councillor Ormsby for the promotion of our wonderful Ahuru Park. I think we'll see some wonderful results there in time, but I do want to pay a tribute to the science team for the production of the environment report. I think that's a really sentinel document, and I just want to go to one particular section in the paper, 5.4, paragraph 5.4. Our environment faces potentially a rapid and substantial change in temperature and rainfall over the next century as a result of climate change. So we've got empirical scientific data measuring what's going on in the environment, and I think we've got a science team second to none doing just that. I'm delighted that they're able to articulate that in language that everyone can understand. Not only is this 3-year report a highly readable document, but the regular updates from the team give us a ball-by-ball description of what's going on on an empirical basis, measured over time, making sure we've got good scientific evidence behind the things we do. So hats off to our science team and the production of that report. It ought to be the document we use on a daily basis to determine all of our policy, wherever it falls, if it's transport or anywhere else. It needs to be evidence-based and something we always fall back on is that good empirical data to guide our work. Mr Chair.
Right, any other speakers? Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. Local Government New Zealand Annual General Meeting. We've got 5 remits to look at here. I'm not sure we want to debate them all. I thought we'd just simply have a thumbs up or a thumbs down like Roman gladiators. Live or die. So 1, about public transport. So,
The Chair, Council officers are available to answer any questions, but
Sure.
we'll take the paper as read.
I just think we go to the live or die, item 1. Well, there's nothing objectionable in that line, resolution 1, is there?
Chair, there's nothing objectionable in any of it. Actually, I'm incredibly disappointed about the weightiness that's not in there in these various remits with all the things that are going on, but that's what is in front of us. And
Well,
I'm more than happy to take your guidance on it.
I think they're, this is about as substantive as they've ever been.
It's amazing then.
Could you not?
3
All right,
waters,
so
Chair,
resource
just to
and
be
rating.
clear, with respect to remit 1, we are recommending opposing the remit
Why?
because we don't support the Free Fares Initiative campaign for the reasons set out.
Who doesn't?
And
Who doesn't?
staff don't, and their recommendation to you is to vote against that remit for the reasons set out in the paper.
So they've spent more time on it than we have.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Do you want to speak to that all, Katrina?
Katrina, you tell us the story.
Remember all that praise a minute ago?
While it might seem that free fares will encourage more people on buses and therefore deliver a more faster route to carbon reductions, we can see even from our own experience in Hawke's Bay that dropping fares to $1 doesn't work. And in fact, what we need is an increase in funding for public transport to provide more effective and efficient services that people want to use. So if we use our own example and our own trial of On Demand in Hastings, where we increase the fee by $1 and within the first few weeks increased patronage by 50% on top of what the existing service had been delivering, we can see that fare price wasn't the factor. It was in actual fact the efficiency and effectiveness of the service that was limiting, not the dollar or the $2 that it cost.
Fair enough, I get that, but so wasn't that was the bus took you from where you were to where you wanted to go, which the other one didn't, so I get that. But what the remit says for to fully and permanently fund, so if the government's going to fully and permanently fund the transport of these people, why would we oppose that?
Chair, could I just offer that if the government was going to put $1 on the table, or let's say $1 million on the table for the region, I think what we're saying is we would rather deploy that into providing greater frequency and coverage of the network, as we're proposing in the plan, than further subsidising the existing service. That's a better utilisation of public funding to get a stronger set of outcomes in the view of council officers.
I get that, but the point is that you're going to say no to a free bus fare for someone who deserves it if the government pays for it. I think it puts you in a very moral bind there.
But through you, Chair, the government is already providing subsidised fares on buses, and that doesn't provide equity, because all they're doing is assisting with the current service, not adding to the service. So there would be no additional funding provided.
Well, could I suggest a joint pathway forward, that we support the remit as it is, and our representatives articulate our case for the money to be better spent another way.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, is one of the two that have to turn up for the AGM.
You two.
Who is the other one? And why?
Anyone. And
Martin, Charlie, I'll be there.
Well, as a data-backed organisation, and as Councillor Curtin just noted, you know, I respect the optics there, Chair, but I also respect the work that the staff have done on this. So if you want to do a hands up on that one.
All right, let's do a hands up. Those in favour, supporting with some commentary, as opposed to those who are opposed. Those in favour, raise a hand. Those opposed, raise a hand. It's opposed.
In other words, we're going with the council recommendation, with the staff recommendation.
We're opposing. Yep.
Yeah.
Remit 2.
Before we move on to that, I just did have a question. Maybe Katrina may be able to help. There are two aspects to the remit. One is under 25s, and the logic there is, well, under 25s are already catching the bus. But the other part is low income.
Yeah.
And bubbling around in my head is the fact that the government's increased or rolled over its half price for community service card holders who are obviously low income. So presumably they're already getting some financial support. Is there a different moral or public transport utilisation case for low income versus under 25s, or are they both in the same basket in terms of the officer's recommendation? Because you've only addressed under 25s in the papers.
Well, the officers obviously put them in the same basket, which I don't.
But yeah,
I'm a minority view.
I'd like to tease that out a little bit.
Are we done?
But remember, any under 18s going to school on a school bus route already get free transport.
Yep.
A large proportion of them already do.
We've already agreed, we're voting it down.
Move on.
Yep, move on.
Yep.
Number 2.
Maybe if someone could enlighten me on that point at some
I
other
look
stage.
forward to your view on 3.
We're supporting
You're opposed.
Yes, we're supporting review of government transport.
We're all happy with support review of government transport. Number 2.
Yep.
Number 3.
Should we just abstain? We can abstain from these votes.
Anyone declare any
We
interest in
don't
number
have
3?
a position or responsibility.
Oh, I'm with you on this. I think I wouldn't vote on this.
Yeah, I didn't last time. I just, things that we,
You're correct. It's not our beef.
Just abstain. Number 3, everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Api is opposing to it.
Sorry?
Api wants to keep street raising.
I have me confused with Councillor Mawson of Napier City.
All right. Item 4. From a former life, I would oppose this. Auckland Council, in my opinion, have a notorious reputation with infringements. I wouldn't trust them with an infringement book if we could throw it at them. I just feel worried that they're going to take this to make a bylaw and then be able to set up an infringement regime for anything they like. I'm very nervous about this from a public position. Yeah.
Can
Anyone?
we hear directly from Katrina, because it's her staff that will be in the firing line?
Through you, Chair, and I'm largely speaking from my experience as a TLA regulatory manager here. Would support this immensely because largely the TLAs have a large number of bylaws and they only can make bylaws, and if they need to take an enforcement action under those bylaws, it's a prosecution. For example, the dumping of litter or rubbish. I was trying to get my head around how that works. If you set a bylaw about the prohibition of dumping, then the only way that I think you can enforce that is by taking a prosecution, but I might be wrong in that regard, so I didn't include it. But particularly where it relates to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, which I thought was quite relevant in terms of trade waste bylaws. And we are working hand in hand with Napier and Hastings District Council on this. They are struggling every day with people or businesses, industry who don't comply with trade waste bylaws, cause pollution incidents, and then really the only recourse for the TLA is to take a prosecution. The fine amount is paltry, and so for a case in point is obviously the Hawke's Bay Galvanisers, where we have joined with Napier to lead that, because under the RMA we have greater enforcement powers. So I understand your concern, Chair, but I think it's with good intent that it is being sought by Auckland Council.
Well, can I give you the opposite? I had a woman come into my office one day, poor, so poor, she couldn't afford to get a warrant or register her car. She was in terrible strife and had to come here to Napier to go and do something. The Napier City Council pounced on her and fined her for no warrant, no registration. She went back over to Hastings. The Hastings District Council pounced on her and fined her again. 4 fines in the one day for the same offence, and neither council would review either of them. So $800 she was donged over the head for. The point I make here is that people who are given infringement notice books will use them as a means of bringing about change. Feel I've issued an infringement notice, I've done my job, I don't care, move on. And I'm frustrated by that. It's a simple solution. I understand why they want it, but it isn't for me the answer. That's my view about it. I just feel that I've seen the system abused, and I'm negative about it. So that's the counter.
So Chair, as often, I'm in full agreement with your lack of trust of the Auckland Council, and then your interesting take on council's powers in general, and implementation of. But having said that, I thought this was about the old window washer issue they used to have in Manukau, trying to prosecute people who were harassing them when the police weren't available. But anyway, at a higher level, I'm with you actually on this one, that there must be a better way, or at least a targeted way in around, say, waste. The example was given, rather than carte blanche to start this. It is a slippery slope.
Right. We've heard the for and against, so let's, you can have
Chair,
three.
I've just got a question of Katrina, if I may. Have we got any enforcement or infringement notice capability around rubbish dumped on council property, or dumping of rubbish in around the place?
On council land, you mean?
Perhaps on a riverbank or whatever.
So, no, because only a territorial authority can make a bylaw for that activity, and we are not classified as a territorial authority. So no.
Does that opportunity to do
No, it does not. No.
The Litter Act 1971, I think, is
Correct.
specific to territorial authorities, not to, it was regional councils can't make bylaws in relation to those those matters. And there are infringement notices under the Litter Act, so you can issue an infringement notice for littering, but only specifically under that Act and only specifically as a territorial authority. But as Katrina said, there are trade waste issues which don't constitute littering, but then fall into this area where an infringement notice, in the case in point, would have been helpful.
So can we change the remit to include us?
It's not our remit.
All right, I'm going to take a vote. It'll be for, against, and the other one's for abstaining on the motion. Right, those who are in favour of this? 2. Those against? 3, 6, down. Right. 5.
No view on vaping.
Chair, I didn't really get a chance to speak on that bylaw.
Oh, good work, Chair.
Well,
Having a shocker, Chair.
always. Let's go to vaping.
Well, as a point of order, I would actually like to speak on that bylaw one. I wasn't ever asked to.
Oh, well, I didn't see your hand up.
Well, yeah, I know, but you could ask if there are any
Well,
other speakers.
Councillor, please speak.
Okay. Well, look, we have bylaws and we have no effective means of enforcing them, and I just think it's driving through the wrong end of the glass or lens or something to worry about the way Auckland might abuse such a power to suggest that it shouldn't be accessible to the wider range of local authorities acting responsibly. I just don't think that's a valid pretext for something that might mean we can make more effective use of a legislative tool that we need to employ. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you. I just observed that I've seen other councils be equally bad. If you want me to go through the list, I can go through the list.
That's fine.
Right.
I won't vote on that tomorrow. I will abstain on that because I don't support
Which one?
the bylaw one. I won't be voting against it.
Did you vote a minute ago?
You're off.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I think I voted for it.
Yeah, you're at conference, yeah.
Or do I have to, some collective responsibility thing here?
you'll have a collective responsibility thing. Yes.
So we canvass there.
You're a representative.
Yeah,
Not
we've
an
sent you there.
But you can speak to it. So we'll have to vote on behalf of the majority. Personally, you can speak to it, I suppose.
The ship has sailed. Thank you.
Right. LGN said vaping.
I look forward to this debate.
Abstain.
Abstain?
Yep.
Yep.
It's full sport.
So does anybody think we should vote for this recommendation?
Which one?
Yes, so.
I just, the vaping, we're a small town. We've got 2 vaping shops on the main street in Wairau, and we're starting to have issues with those stores. Well, what's happening is there's these little canisters that are being sold from vaping stores, and I don't know why, because there's something to do with catering. I don't know what vaping's got to do with catering, but apparently the gases are being used as a drug. And yeah, like it says, vaping's supposed to support people who want to stop smoking, not encourage the rangatahi to take it up, even though they never smoked at all. So yeah, not that I have a say. I can just advise that from a Wairau perspective, we're not really supportive of increased vaping stores or vaping retailers or dairy selling them. Yeah, so it's becoming a problem.
So the Wairau Council may well be voting against it then. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I'd say
That's the
Craig
avenue.
Ma already know about this
Yeah,
because it's
because this
becoming
is
a
an
quite
environment
issue back
council.
home.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
And I've already had a word with the CE about it, and it is slightly off topic because it is vaping retailers, the density of them, and that isn't, that's not our responsibility. But as Michelle says, it is a huge problem, and currently the Hastings and Napier are adding it into their smoke-free and vaping policy to eliminate vaping with smoking at all parks and playgrounds and so on. So I know this is not the remit, but I just wanted to mention that it would be great if, do we even have that policy? And if we, at our open spaces and parks, at Waitangi, for example, and if we do, can we, fold it into our policy that we would eliminate vaping from those spaces? Something to consider.
Well, that's something for another debate.
Yes, it is, but just wanted to bring it to the
Yeah, I've got
table.
that, yeah.
Thank you.
So do we support this or not? Charlie?
No,
I don't think it's on.
mainly because it's a health thing.
So abstain, you mean?
Abstain.
Abstain from the vote.
Yeah, or not support it, yeah, that's right.
All right, I'm just saying, I just get the,
What actually is it? I don't know what it is, but you see there's people in like huge plume of smoke, like might be chemical into the atmosphere, so maybe it is environmental.
Yeah, exactly. It is a lot of chemicals.
That's right, Will.
They put chemicals
It is a lot of chemicals in that.
You put
Yeah, so-
nicotine in it.
just, I'm trying to get, do we support the remit or
Abstain.
oppose it? We'll just abstain from it.
Abstain.
I got a whole pile of people saying abstain.
So can we move those remit decisions we've just been through?
I
Please.
thought, item one, we abstain. I just thought that, the end, we'll have recorded that as we've gone through.
Can I
Correct?
just make a comment though?
Yeah.
If we're moving it, or the ones that we've decided on with the hands up, is that remit for the bylaw infringements.
Yeah.
So I'm mindful that we've created a collaborative relationship with Napier City, and for example, the hydrochloric acid spill that went into Ahuriri Estuary about 2 years ago, Napier City Council couldn't enforce as well as they could have without our help. And yes, we've created a collaborative relationship with them since. So if we're going to oppose remit 4, I think we have to have a conversation with Napier City Council to, one, explain why, because possibly they've got their own way of voting, which I'm sure that we'll see tomorrow. But just to ensure that that relationship gets stronger because we've voted this way also. So it's a bit of a, I don't know if you're listening, Katrina, or but James. Yeah, that although we oppose that, we strengthen our relationship in being able to enforce when there is enforcement action needed. Yep, because I don't want this to be,
Sure, I will.
you know, stress other relationships.
I get that, but I just want to say, I probably have spent more time on infringement policy, infringement notices, than anybody. I led a body of work overhauling all of this for a long time. I've been up and down all the rest of it. I can say, and this here is a very crude way of approaching it. It misses about 4 or 5, in my view, really important elements of this. The key one being about bringing about behaviour change. There's nothing in here about bringing about behaviour change. If they had started with that, I'd have thought fair enough, but they don't. This is just knock them on the head. And if it's just knock them on the head, I'm opposed to it. In terms of collaboration, working about a better way of bringing about behaviour change, I'd support it 100%. So no problem with that.
That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with you on that. No problem with that. All right.
Chair, have you had any representation from any other councils or anything on an approach to any of these things, or CE?
We do. Fixing a common seal. Joe, if you'd like to move it, I'll second that.
I oppose. I'm just joking.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no.
Good one, mate.
Councillor Williams, would you like to vote?
It's been a long day, man.
Hey, not at all.
Councillors' reports from meetings on outside bodies. Would you like to talk on any of these? Will?
It's kind of more of a notice, but Future Farming Trust is holding an event August 11th, 6:30 p.m. at Toi Toi. Guest speakers are the Minister of Agriculture, Damien O'Connor, and commentator Rod Oram, talking about the future of farming, primary production, and all the challenges it faces heading into the future. So, yeah, it's a free event, so hopefully see as many people there as we can. Thank you.
We've been all invited, haven't we?
Yes,
What time is that, sorry?
6:30 p.m.
30.
Okay. Just quickly. In terms of minor items not on the agenda, I have 2. I just want to, first minor item is about Wharf 6. Note that there was a very successful opening of Wharf 6 on Friday. Wharf 6 come in ahead of schedule and under budget, which was a magnificent result for their leadership team and the work of their contractors. At the opening, I was very pleased to hear the chair of the port company identifies health and safety as the key issue for him, that everybody came to work safe and went home from work safe. And I thought highlighting the health and safety was a really important thing. I was very impressed with that. Did not take it lightly. I also think that in the opening of Wharf 6, the role of this council on that has been understated. Let's just go back in time and note that this council was a 100% shareholder in the port. And the port company had a problem about its capacity, and one of the solutions they put up was Wharf 6. It's $170, $180 odd million. The council had to go through the issue of whether or not they would agree to fund it, either fund it directly themselves by any other mechanism or not fund it. One of the easiest decisions would have been to simply say it's too big. Or another decision would have been to say we'll simply borrow the money and load it onto the ratepayers. But this council took what I think was a very courageous decision to agree to float 45% of the port company. And with the funds from the float, pay for Wharf 6. I think just want to record that the leadership of that was the former chair, Rex Graham, who personally convinced me to sell a public asset. I've been an opponent of public asset sales since the 1980s and have been derided by a lot of my friends for having done so, but I thought the argument in the end was compelling. And I would also like to note that all of the other things that people said about the problems were going to be with this process have been so far to date founded as untrue. This has been a hugely successful operation. It's gone remarkably smoothly. I'd like to congratulate those who were involved in that, the chair of the port company, Alistair Todd and others, for really outstanding leadership on this. Our own H-Brick executive officer, Blair O'Keefe, I thought they did a wonderful job in culminating in an outstanding result. What it says to the world is Hawke's Bay is open for business. We've got a brand new wharf, ready to go, all the capacity, and I think this council's done a fine job in providing leadership and providing assets and resources for the future development of our community. Job well done, and the council should take a pat itself on the back for doing a fine job, no question about it. The other thing I would raise about climate change, just to say that to steal a line from the chief executive in a conversation I had with us on one day, he observed that in the future, 20 years' time, the regional council's primary objective will be defending the region from a range of adverse events. Will it be flooding? Will it be fires, etc.? And I thought it was kind of a pessimistic comment, observation. But looking at what's happened around the world to date in the last few weeks, I think the chief executive's observation is closer to the truth than what many people would feel comfortable with. In the Northern Hemisphere, 2 years ago, a group of climate scientists predicted what the weather map for Europe would look like in 2050. The weather map that was put up 2 weeks ago was exactly what they predicted 2 years ago would be the case in 2050. And they were appalled at that. The range of temperatures which were out of sight from what was possible at the time they wrote that. We have major flooding in the South Island to the extent we haven't seen. And I just think that this council is going to have to, as it goes forward in the near future, think very carefully about its assets and resources and its stance on climate change. The work that's being led by Giraffe and co as a committee on the coastal hazards needs to proceed apace. And there are other aspects of this which I think this council in the future is going to have to get on top of. We either have the choice of either being ahead of the wave or behind the wave. And I think you, as a council in the future, are going to have to think very carefully about being ahead of the wave. We cannot think that this is simply someone else's problem so far off in the future. It's going to be solved at Doha or Paris or something like that. We just have to accept the reality that it's not going to be solved. The reality is ice sheets are melting at an unprecedented rate. Heat waves are coming at unprecedented levels. Record temperatures are being smashed around the planet. Record rainfalls are being impacted. And I'll leave you with this one last simple little fact, that every 1 degree increase in average temperature means the atmosphere can hold over 7% more water. 7% more water means that when the storms come, they're going to be much more water in them, much heavier, much more powerful. And we have to factor this in. If we rise another 1 degree, it's another 7%. And so when you're thinking about that, about 100-year and 500-year floods, these are going to be on our doorstep really quickly. So I just think we, as leaders in the region, leaders in the environment, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council needs to move from being not only a leader in the country on coastal hazards, so on, it needs to be that much further ahead of the pack for the safety and the well-being of the people it protects.
Chair, could I just add a very quick comment, just for council's awareness?
Sure.
We had a meeting yesterday of the coordinating executive group of Hawke's Bay Civil Defence and Emergency Management, and in that meeting we had some discussion about the upcoming summer and had some very useful commentary from the Regional Commander for Fire and Emergency New Zealand, Ken Cooper, who ran through what currently is underway by way of fire preparedness, particularly around wildfire. And what was great to hear is that FENZ Hawke's Bay is working really closely with your regional council team. Our GIS team is providing mapping inputs into a comprehensive analysis of forest fire and rural fire risk right across the region, along with our land management advisory staff. And so plans are being put into place to ensure that FENZ understand where all of the risks are across the region from a hot, dry summer, where all the resources are in terms of firefighting capability and capacity, including water resources, etc., and what we have in the way of vulnerable communities. So that concern that we've had following the Tasman fires 2 years ago has been well and truly gripped up here in Hawke's Bay, and there's a good partnership going on, not only between our team and FENZ, but also a whole range of rural stakeholders working in a land management group, ensuring that we've got a prepared strategy as a region to deal with that risk. So for me, that rounds out the set of interventions that we've had around too much or too little water, and the issues we have on the coastal hazards as well. We've effectively got interventions now across all of our major key risks relating to climate change. He did make the comment that the biggest concern for FENZ is carbon forestry, where there is not an ongoing dedicated focus on forest management, particularly around fire breaks, firefighting resources, the sorts of things that commercial foresters typically have to protect their crops. So that's just something for us to continue to watch as we support afforestation in the region, but recognise that it's not without some risk.
And then one other vulnerability is, having been to Australia on a number of occasions where we've sent firefighters over to help with fight fires over there, and have spoken to people in the States in areas which are vulnerable to fire. These communities have lived with fires, and people understand the risk and they moderate their behaviour. I don't see that level of appreciation or understanding here, and my worry is that people are going to continue to go about their daily lives, do things they've normally done without appreciating the potential risk of starting a fire. It's interesting that in Spain, the last big fire was started by workmen which using operate equipment to do some particular work, and a spark come off at the start of the fire. Well, these are people who know fires, know the risk, and still they made a mistake. We here don't understand the risk yet, in my view, and I feel that we're going to be a long time before the public get within their head just how risky this is. Apiana, I think we're about closed.
That's right. Just a question to the CE around the FNZ stuff. How can we input into that as representatives into our community? For example, in the Warrell catchment, we have a lot of rural communities bordering a lot of forestry blocks. There is no mitigation or assistance for those communities, so just understanding the scope and scale of the risk to them might enable a conversation in those spaces for us. So we'd welcome the opportunity to understand how we can input, and also how information coming back can inform our constituents around, as the Chair says, behavioural modification, et cetera, et cetera.
Good point.
Okay. We're going public excluded.
Thank you. And can we have morning tea at the same time?
Yes.
After.
We have
Right.
we had one other
minor item,
minor
Chair.
item.
No. Oh, yeah.
Same one we forgot.
Clive Wheat.
Clive Weed, sorry, yes.
What is important, I think, in the Clive, where we have got an issue with sediment, so they don't need more problems over there. The Rowan community has got some real issues with weed that's actually floating in clumps in the Clive. Our staff are working very closely with the Rowan Club over there and those who organise events. But sometimes it can't be helped that actually weeds actually are floating in large clumps through the Clive to the coast and also the dotterel habitat. So we have tried before a system of actually putting a cable network across on an angle the Clive, the flow, and it actually then flows into a particular area where it then actually can be taken off. I believe, talking to those who were involved, that actually it wasn't actually in a very good area where there was access for a digger and trucks to actually take that weed away and be repurposed for composting and the nutrients be reused again. So I would propose and suggest that we have a look at it again to actually clean that particular area up. So just as a
I'm happy to add a comment. If you recall, in the last LTP, we put some additional funding aside to investigate abstracting the weed rather than cutting it. So that work still has to be undertaken. We've trialled it in the past, and what we found is that we had some significant eel bycatch when we took the material out, and that was deemed unacceptable, so we need to find a better way. But our intent, once we do a thorough investigation and the right funding mechanisms, is to catch the weed as it's harvested, so we don't rely on the Clive River to remove it out to sea. So it is a known issue. We do have money set aside, but we just need to resource that investigation.
Thank you. I'll take Neil's motion that go into committee. Do I have a seconder? Sheriff? All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Carried. While we're in committee, we'll break for afternoon tea.
It's a highly sensitive matter, isn't it?